Pretty bad news for the Democratic Party.
Republican lawmakers yesterday rejecting Democrats.
This is needless politics by the Democrats.
AOC, Bernie, Mamdani.
Pretty embarrassing story involving the Democrats.
The Democratic Party's jet fuel is a sense of aggrievement and victimhood at America itself.
And a Democratic candidate for governor has a total meltdown on camera.
Americans hate Democrats. You have them polling worse than Trump, even though he's running the entire American experiment into the ground. The people have decided to put more faith into a man that incited an insurrection and attempted to coup the government than the Democratic Party. This didn't happen naturally, and this wasn't unavoidable. However, it's vitally important we identify and address the most important problems with the left. We are on the brink of losing everything we claim America stands for. If you clicked on this video, then you are aware there is a plethora of voices analyzing the party to death. No matter their political affiliation or alignment, they all have a pet issue they claim is the sole reason the Democrats lost to Trump in the last election. But the truth is, all of these responses paint different and, more importantly, contradictory stories. What people have been giving as feedback seems about as useful as the like button on a YouTube video, which you should totally click on, by the way. Recently, my girlfriend and I have been reading Kamala Harris's new book before bed, and while contemplating all the ways that campaign went wrong and seeing the behind-the-scenes picture of how the top members of the Democratic Party operate, I saw the true reason every corner of America hates them. In a just world, Donald Trump shouldn't be able to get more than 15% of the public's support. Our culture is broken. Let's explore how the Democrats can receive an actual mandate from the people. I want to explore the three main categories that every response people give as to why they distrust or dislike the Democratic Party will fall into. We have the core values, the policy positions, and the follow-through. Basically, you can either have problems with the core values of the party, how they translate those core values into policy positions, or how they actually implement those policies into law after they gain political power. Let's start by analyzing these core values. Broadly speaking, and from what I can gather from the Democratic Party website, they are most accurately described by the term most people colloquially exchange for Democrat: liberal. Liberalism, in its most generic form, is something that I would find it hard to believe most Americans wouldn't support if they took the time to think about it. It's defined by individual rights and liberty, consent of the governed, political equality, as well as equality under the law, and the right to private property. Economically, this means the belief in free trade, and the power markets have to distribute goods and labor most efficiently. Typically, their views range from neoliberalism, think of privatization, deregulation, and globalization, to social democrats, defined by social programs and governmental assistance supplemented by strong capitalist markets. I personally fall closer to the latter camp and see that as where most of the party is heading, but almost all Democrats are still capitalists, much to the dismay of my leftist friends. As far as social policy goes, they typically fall into the progressive category. This is a relatively recent development and has been the vector of the most change for the Democrats, specifically as social issues and culture wars have been the center of much of our modern politics. They champion LGBTQ rights, focus on protecting minorities, and promote diversity, equity, and inclusion wherever they can, giving birth to the horrific DEI boogeyman that Republicans have created a whole culture war around. Now, as far as the core values of the party go, the public actually broadly supports Democrats more than Republicans. This is some welcome positivity given the current state of affairs, but that doesn't stop many Americans from having their issues. It's still less than half of Americans. Considering the polling, and upon reflection, these values capture much of what America was founded to be, and I don't think most Americans actually disagree with these values. They just don't know what they are. Here is our first red flag. The important question to ask when it comes to people's feelings on the Democratic Party is what exactly is coming to mind for them when they're asked these questions. What do they think the core values even are? Breaking this down further, the critique from the most vocal on the right is that Democrats are communist Marxists, that Biden, Obama, and most recently Kamala would turn America into a communist shell of its former self. These attacks are laughably false, as we had 2 terms of Obama and one of his vice president without them advocating for communism in the slightest. But what about the critiques from the left? Well, the most far-left individuals often echo the phrase, "scratch a liberal, a fascist bleeds," insinuating that their capitalist policies inevitably lead to fascism. You also hear progressives saying that their social values aren't progressive enough. So evidently, it would seem that they both believe Democrats are too to far right. The center-left coalition is by definition going to agree with the core values. They just might disagree with policy or political action, so we will revisit them later. As for the moderates and centrists, if they even exist, it would appear they have the impression Democrats are too progressive. What is confusing and difficult to parse about all this information is what exactly does all of this tell us? Where is the common thread we can pull at when everyone doesn't just have different views as to what the problem even is, but those views blatantly contradict each other at their core? If specific issues aren't telling us what to do, then maybe broadening our perspective can give us some insight. We've already identified that people aren't sure what the Democrats actually believe, and it seems these specific issues also point us in that direction. If you actually talk with liberals and people who run on the Democratic platform, you'll know they are principally opposed to fascism, and they likely recognize wealth inequality as a serious issue that needs to be addressed. They also overwhelmingly support minorities and the LGBTQ community. They continually fight for policies to be more inclusive. But somehow, people don't connect what people supporting the Democratic Party believe to the actual Democratic Party. This is part of the problem, but we need to uncover more if we want a long-term solution to people's adversity to the Democratic brand. Now we really get to dig into the meat and potatoes. This seems to be where most people get off the Democratic platform. Polls indicate we might actually be onto something here, so maybe we can get to the root cause of our political troubles. The closest thing Democrats have to a Project 2025 is their platform website, which links to a 92-page document going over most of their policy positions. I encourage you to take some time to look over it and familiarize yourself with what they claim to be advocating for. Just tune out what you have heard other people tell you they support and read it for yourself. At the very least, you can see if they actually attempt to pass what they mention in their agenda. That being said, this is where I think the facts really start to show public perception doesn't conform to reality. Analyzing what people report as their issues with Democratic policy, most people on the right only ever bring up trans issues, that or DEI policies, but again, when you actually are forced to confront reality, it all falls apart. DEI stands for diversity, equity, and inclusion, which most people on the right can't even get to unassisted. I'm sure if you're watching this video, you already understand this. I hope most people would be on board once they fully understand what DEI actually is, but even if not, the only DEI policies that happened under Biden were a few executive orders that, if someone actually sat down and explained them to people, would be the least controversial EOs imaginable. When hearing from people further left, they often suggest the policies don't go far enough. They have the view that the Democrats are sandbagging their policies and ceding ground to Republicans. Not only do they have their issues with social policy, but obviously the pro-capitalist policies are very aggravating to the leftists in America. Quite a number of people, ranging from progressives to centrists, have the view that Democrats are corporatists, selling out to the donor class and not advocating for pro-worker policies. I want to be very clear that this couldn't be further from the truth. The Biden administration had broad support from labor unions, and it was the labor unions themselves who dubbed Biden as the most pro-union president in history. On top of this, most of the fears about lobbying and politicians being bought are completely blown out of proportion, especially when it comes to Democrats. So many people have forgotten that the most corporatist Democrat imaginable, Hillary Clinton, very boldly ran on appointing Supreme Court justices to overturn Citizens United. For those who complain about stock trading, this is public information and you can make the exact same portfolio as the members of Congress if you think they have some insane gains. Once again, reality betrays public perception. Furthermore, the attacks originating from the left about the party not being progressive enough are directly contradicted by the two most thrown around names when promoting this idea. Gavin Newsom was performing gay marriages illegally back in 2004, in direct response to George W. Bush calling out courts for redefining marriage by court order. Kamala Harris hosted a symposium in 2006 educating lawyers on defeating the gay and trans panic defense. For those unaware, this was a defense used in court cases where the perpetrator would claim they were so shocked when discovering someone was trans or gay, they entered a state of panic and just attacked them out of fear, which sometimes did result in reduced sentences. Absolute insanity. A common accusation that I hear thrown around, predominantly from the right or center people when asked about why they don't like the Democratic Party, is that they've moved too far left. You often see this meme circulated, most popularly by Elon Musk, when talking about why people suddenly have hitched their wagon to the Trump train. Now, for the techno-feudalist billionaires like Musk, who see themselves as humanity's only chance for salvation, the main driver is actually financial incentives, obviously. However, that doesn't change the fact that a lot of political normies feel this way. This is by far and without a doubt the least likely true explanation of all. We only need to look at the Republican versus Democratic platforms in the 2012 presidential race to see how ridiculous this claim is. Mitt Romney hasn't changed a bit since he ran, as the Republican nominee for president no less, and now MAGA sees him as left. Trump absolutely hates the guy and has labeled him and his ilk rhinos, meaning Republican in name only. It's clear MAGA has driven Republicans extremely far right since their not so hostile party takeover. Just like the core values, Democratic policy positions feel like an unsatisfying answer to this problem. It's so frustrating to talk about these issues because it feels like no one is actually telling us the real reason why they don't like the Democratic Party. They are just misinformed or even willfully ignorant just to support Donald Trump. The best evidence for why we shouldn't be too critical of the actual policy positions comes from a recent NYT article and subsequent Ezra Klein podcast. They found that simply changing the candidate from running as a Democrat to an independent without touching their policy positions resulted in a 10 to 15 point increase in support in states like Michigan and Ohio. So it seems that just the brand itself is the issue. They dubbed this the Democratic penalty. And this penalty is evident by the contradictory nature of people's responses to why they don't like the party. We're definitely getting closer to the answer, so maybe we'll get more information when we explore the Democratic accomplishments. Getting right into it, the most common given example from the right of failed policy has been the border. Immigration policy is seen as a massive failure of the Democratic Party. The truth is, the Democratic Party somehow got the reputation of being open borders, when it's nowhere near their stance on the issue. The surge in immigration is very clearly explained by the faulty asylum-seeking process, and the Democrats did move on fixing the issue once they were aware it was a public concern. But Trump insisted on every Republican voting no to their own border bill in order to keep it alive for his campaign. And why was this even an issue? It just materialized out of thin air. All of a sudden, people in rural communities were concerned with the border. It just doesn't make sense where people get these ideas. How does public opinion get so far away from reality? In addressing the calls from the left, the Democratic Party received a lot of flack for its position on the Israel-Palestine conflict leading up to the election. And a common critique you might hear is the so-called ratchet effect. The idea is Republican politicians actually are effective at turning back the clock, so to speak, undoing rights, taking away protections, and the Democrats simply hold everything in place to maintain the status quo without progressing, causing America to shift rightward over time. Yet again, I must bring everyone back to reality. This truly is exhausting. The statements Kamala gave in support of Palestine were never good enough, and people refuse to believe that Trump could possibly have made the situation any worse. This mentality of purity testing has ruined any chances we had at advocating for Palestinians. Who do you think would be more likely to be sympathetic to Palestine, Kamala or Trump, especially given everything that's happened now? People even recently gave Obama shit for his statements simply because his rhetoric wasn't perfect. And don't even get me started on this ratchet effect bullshit. Often given as an example of this is Obama's supermajority not codifying Roe v. Wade when we had the chance. Please, I beg you to read into how long he had that supermajority, what the makeup of the Democratic Party was, and what was at stake. Long story short, he had to choose between passing the ACA and giving up on codifying Roe, or losing the ability to do both. Obviously, the choice was to get the Affordable Care Act passed, which I would say was a massive success, just given how much Republicans absolutely hate it. Okay, I just don't understand it. Every reason and example given just isn't based in reality. It's clear that the Republican propaganda machine is just too strong. They have control over everyone's social media feeds, and no matter what what the Democrats do or say, as long as it comes out of their mouth, they're just going to reject it. So it all seems hopeless. The anti-intellectual and anti-establishment sentiments among Americans is just too strong. The alternative media has brain broken the American public, and now they are hell-bent on hating the Democratic Party, even if that means the destruction of a republic. Let it all burn. I don't care anymore. Why can't people just wake the fuck up? Why isn't the truth enough anymore? Kamala Harris literally told the American people exactly what Donald Trump would do when he got into office. He did every single thing that she said he would do, and yet they voted for him anyway. The truth just doesn't matter. If telling people the truth isn't enough, then what could she have done? A lot of people have come around to this position or something similar, but fail to fully contend with its consequences. The true problem with the Democratic Party has very little to do with anything we've been talking about. This analysis paralysis of digging and digging through every issue in policy to try to figure out where the party has lost ground with voters is itself part of the problem. They just suck at modern politics. They are so lost in the sauce. And that's okay, because I didn't even really fully grasp the picture until I started writing down my thoughts about all of this stuff. You have heard it time and time again, that we live in a post-truth world, that people don't care about facts. The inverted Ben Shapiro one-liner that I decided to use to title this video, "Feelings don't care about facts," is the key to understanding everything. We know this. Many left-leaning people, myself included, will sit there and bitch and moan about how people don't care about the facts anymore, that the truth doesn't matter, and that people are just ignorant and misinformed, but then continue to try to use facts in the face of people who hate the Democratic Party. Why do we keep doing this? The Republicans are shamelessly lying to people and defining the Democratic Party for them. And then we're confused to why they're losing voters. The party has to define itself. Being good little politicians that have nice policies and do their best to pass them just isn't enough anymore. It can't undo the decades of propaganda that's been shoveled into the American consciousness. We have to come to terms with reality and accept that the truth isn't enough anymore. To fully embrace what modern politics is, we must first take a look at how politics has worked for much of American history, and still works to a decent degree today. How it was intended to, and should work, in my honest opinion, was that representatives were exactly that. They represented their constituents' beliefs, which were based on their lived experiences. If they had issues or problems in their communities, they would bring up those problems to their representatives, and that would create the policy stances and issues they would run on to try to pass legislation and address those issues. This is why politicians are obsessed with polling. They are trying to gauge what issues people care about. Obviously, they balance this with their own personal beliefs about those issues, but by and large, they are trying to represent their constituents. The major body of American political power is supposed to be Congress. That's what republic means. Hell, this is where the term Republican comes from, but that is nowhere close to the full reality of 21st century politics. Can anyone in the audience think of a pillar of modern culture that has massively disrupted how this dynamic is supposed to work? The internet. What started this shift was the popularization of TV, but it lacked a crucial element that sent this new form of politics into overdrive: interconnectivity. This single-handedly turned this feedback loop in reverse. With the internet, every problem has the potential to become a national issue, no matter how few people it actually affects. People's concept of what issues are important are now directly influenced and received from the political party they support. Their entire reality is warped by the social media they consume, to the point where pertinent issues can manifest out of thin air for some voters. Now, this hasn't completely replaced the old way, but it has reached critical mass. It's become a viable political strategy to dump most of your efforts into this new dynamic. Donald Trump stumbled into this in 2016, but realistically, it was people like Charlie Kirk that actually understood what was going on. From now on, I will refer to this concept as the in-group narrative. The idea being that people's political realities are shaped by the narratives perpetuated by their in-groups. In modern times, in-groups can be both, in real life, like churches, and more importantly for this video, online spaces. What supercharged this in-group narrative dynamic, and allowed Trump to become re-elected in 2024, in my opinion, is the massive increase in people getting online during the COVID pandemic. Enough people were getting their political opinions online that even the people who didn't were tainted by the people around them echoing misinformation. The surge in interconnectivity allowed for control over the in-group narrative to a scale never before possible. This is true for every faction in American politics. This even applies to myself. All of these facts and the truth that I've been alluding to try to defend the Democratic Party all comes from my in-group, from the people I talk to, from the voices I listen to online, the groups that I'm a part of. That's where all of this comes from. We, being the broad left, are just lucky that, for the most part, the voices we listen to are somewhat principally grounded in finding the truth, and that they have some level of integrity, and at least will admit when they're wrong. But what happens when an in-group as culturally dominant in America as the Republican Party, that previously was decently reliable, decides to completely abandon its integrity and principles? You get the disastrous political fissure that we are experiencing today. It's why talking to the right feels absolutely impossible. The reason the in-group narrative framework is so vitally important to this conversation is that society has always viewed truth this way. America was lucky in the 20th century that the establishment behind our political in-groups largely relied on scientific consensus and journalistic integrity for its narratives. The Democratic Party ended up taking this for granted in the 21st century. Bad actors began to erode the public's trust in the establishment, which led people shifting their source for in-group narrative to alternative media and online as we went into this new millennium. From the public's perspective, nothing has changed with how they receive their source of political reality. That's why they often get the feeling that the left has abandoned them or just started calling them ignorant, liars, and bigoted. Looking at things this way, it's obvious why Democrats are losing ground politically. They lack the ability to fight on the in-group level of messaging, which is why they always seem on the back foot. They are passively reactive to public sentiment after it's already been defined for them by the right's campaign to capture people's in-group narrative. Charlie Kirk did not practice politics the right way, but he 100% practiced politics very effectively. Him and others like him worked tirelessly to infiltrate the in-groups people got their narratives from and then fought hard to control that narrative. His online presence plus ground game created an in-group narrative that stuck. It wasn't based in reality, and it was filled with hatred, but it had an element that Democrats laughably lack in modern times: idealism. This is precisely what the Democrats need to start doing, and I'm not saying we have to abandon truth or use their hateful rhetoric, but we have to fight on a deeper, more fundamental playing field. The Dems can still use polling and knowledge on the issue to figure out the best policies and values, but dear God, we need better presentation. They have to be more willing to accept anyone who will shamelessly promote their ideology and values. This recent push towards populist candidates we have seen resonate online isn't an endorsement of populism. It's a hint at a deeper flaw in American culture. I'm sure you've heard people talking about the recent meaning crisis among young Americans, as well as people around the globe. What they are seeking is idealism, someone that champions their values and beliefs so valiantly it's contagious. It's seen as a cure to the nihilistic trend our society has been on. That's why religion is picking back up among young men. Idealism is a core value of modern politics. Truth doesn't matter to people as much as their dedication to their ideals. The best evidence that this is the new way forward is in the most popular aspects of the Democratic movement right now. Gavin Newsom and AOC couldn't be further apart in terms of the range of beliefs within the Democratic Party, but they are among the most popular members. The current government shutdown has brought back some life and hope to the movement, seeing that Democrats are willing to stand on their principles. And the one thing tying all of this together is these are moments the party is being idealistic. This is why people often claim the party party is inauthentic. They are too passive when it comes to issues, and the only way to actually win back public support is to drastically change how they view politics. We don't have the time or the luxury to wait for public opinion to shift on a lot of these issues. The damage that's already been done by Trump will take decades to fix. So we need a party that has enough support to actually drive the country forward for decades to come. We have to create the salience for these issues. The one thing that I'm most afraid of is that they will just wait for public opinion to sour on the Trump administration to win in 2026 and 2028. Like I said, this new form of politics hasn't replaced the old way, so it's likely that this could still get them elected. But the big problem here is the public has been inoculated against the Democratic Party through decades of propaganda. They aren't going to support the party long enough to actually fix anything. They will just vote for the next populist or idealistic candidate because they crave meaning. Due to lots of people just following their in-group narrative, things will keep swinging back and forth with a Republican Party that has abandoned core American values. This is unacceptable. We cannot afford to lose again, at least not for a long time to come. The left needs a top-down way of spreading its messaging, and it should be easier for us because we actually have the truth on our side. It shouldn't be that difficult to try to make a compelling narrative around the truth. It just takes a little bit of effort, but we cannot delude ourselves into thinking this problem will fix itself because the other side isn't playing by the same set of rules. They aren't waiting for people to arrive at their positions. They aren't waiting for people to just stumble into becoming Republicans. They are distorting their in-group narratives to favor them. And to be clear, this doesn't have to be some dystopian indoctrination campaign. Part of this is literally just spending the time it takes to rehabilitate the image of the Democratic Party by talking to people and getting to the in-group level, creating communities where people feel like they're cool and they can be a part of and something to actually strive for. We need idealism. I have yet to try this, so take this with a grain of salt, but I would even try being transparent about this whole in-group narrative dynamic. When you start to have a factual disagreement and you hear the propaganda talking points come up, just let them know that these are in-group narratives and that your in-group narratives that you also fall victim to are just at odds with each other. And you and this other person can take the time to try to dig a little deeper and figure out the truth behind the narrative. What is actually going on? I'm thinking that exposing this dynamic and actually communicating with people on this level not only will help communication, but might help inoculate them against this behavior in the future. They might realize that they're just being sold a well-packaged narrative. I have been yapping quite a bit, but I truly believe that the Democratic Party has a lot to gain with this framework moving forward. It's not enough to beat Trump just because he's crazy. Americans shouldn't be seeing both sides as anywhere close to the same thing. One side is clearly worse, but we're too quick to use our intellectual cope, because that's what it is, when we say people are just misinformed. Getting people educated and actually understanding what our values are part of modern politics. This is part of the game now. We have to fight at this new fundamental level of in-group narrative. It's not enough to just complain people are ignorant and uneducated. We have to dig deeper and see the bigger picture. If you enjoyed this video, please share. I'm trying to grow this channel and really hope to do something much bigger with it in the future, and I want to use this to try to build momentum and, actually accomplish things. So it would be wonderful if you could leave a comment, do all of it, subscribe, whatever. This script is pretty raw and I haven't really fully sculpted all of my ideas around this topic, but if you want to leave a comment about your thoughts and what you think, that would be great. And if someone else has already come up with this idea or commented something very similar, feel free to leave their videos in the comments below and I can go ahead and watch those and, add that to my understanding. Editor David here. I actually just saw a video uploaded by Ryan Getty that encapsulates much of what I think the core issue with the Dems are right now. I suggest you watch that video as well if you enjoyed my comments on the issue. It more centers around how to build a story around liberalism as an ideology. It gives a very concrete answer to the very problem I highlighted in this video. It's time to create a movement centered around shared ideals that can blossom into actually achieving political power. I believe in the American project and think we truly have a chance to radically redefine the Democratic Party to be more in line with what people think and feel and want. After all, it's supposed to serve the people. The true power of this country has always been in the hands of the people, and it's time we use it. As always, thank you for your time.